somewhere where you're feeling like you're watching a show or Netflix or a movie or your favorite reading nook, something along those lines, so that again, we can just kind of begin moving into rest and relaxation there. All right, let's check the chat function here. Perfect. Hey, Ken, I'm just around the corner from Roberts Creek right now. Great to have you. Natalie over in Canmore, Mission, Parksville, Clive's over in Springfield, Illinois, Marie from Seattle, how you doing? Kim over in North Vancouver. Amazing. Well, it looks like the chat function is working for everyone here. So for those of you who I have not met before, my name is Jordan. I'm the founder here at Mind and Soil, where we're looking to introduce 1 million individuals to gardening's mental health benefits. So for those of you that are maybe on the more experienced side of gardening, my guess is that a big part of why you come back to the garden each and every season is because of how calming it is, how peaceful it is, how restorative you find it to be. And for those of you that are maybe on the newer side to gardening, I know that it can feel a little bit daunting, a little bit overwhelming. And so a huge part of our duty, our responsibility at Mind and Soil is to help you feel more comfortable, more confident in getting your hands dirty. So if any questions that you have over the course of the season, through the winter, into the next season, please, please, please do send those through and along to us. You can do so on Instagram. So our Instagram account is at Mind and Soil. Go ahead, give us a follow there and send questions through into our direct messages. We'll answer them all. Or here on YouTube, you can subscribe, and then we release new videos each and every week, and then just drop those questions onto the video, and we'll be able to, once again, answer each and every one of them. And so for today, we're of course talking about peppers. And I'm not sure if any of you are in the same position as me, and especially me last year, but this is what my pepper plants were looking like in the end of October, kind of beginning of November. We're really kind of like right on the brink and potentially needing to go into the compost. But I figured, hey, I want to have a little bit of a challenge here. I'm going to go ahead and give it a whirl, see if I can overwinter this baby. And so what I'm going to be walking through over the course of this evening was how I took a pepper plant like this, and a couple months later had it looking exactly like this, living indoors, absolutely thriving, and most of all, putting on a whole bunch of foliage growth so that when we move it back into the garden the coming spring, it's no longer just a little plant that's maybe 1 inch or 2 inches tall, but rather a really big, beautiful, developed plant. So if you're all set, all ready for us to begin diving into our session and the different steps that we need to go through to be able to overwinter a pepper plant, go ahead, type into the chat function, let's grow. And while those begin to come through, we've been doing these for a little while now. And so we've got a whole bunch of folks that have started to utilize our products. And we got this really amazing story from one of our customers just the other day that I wanted to share with each and every one of you. So Anne, she sent through just to us just the other day, using your worm castings and planting techniques, my garden production was amazing. I'm still picking tomatoes and cucumbers. I've never had such prolific results. I've canned, frozen, and dried enough produce to last over a year and given a lot away to neighbors. I'm looking forward to planting my garlic, 150 bulbs on October 20th. As you suggested, if the rain ever stops. So absolutely love to hear this, and specifically those techniques. Those are exactly what I want to be diving into this evening for overwintering peppers. And I can see Shelly saying, let's grow, Barbara saying, let's go, Dolly, let's grow, let's grow. Everyone is all set. Perfect. Let's go ahead and dive in with the very first step of overwintering our pepper babies, is that we need to dig them up from the outdoors to bring them inside. The reason why we want to go about doing this is because peppers are perennials. So under the right conditions and in the right environment, they will continue to grow. But what's happening outside right now for all of us that are joining on this call, wherever it is that we are, it's getting colder, we're getting more rain. It's no longer an ideal environment for the pepper plants. And that's why we see them starting to look really sad in the gardens. So what we need to do is first dig them up. And I'm going to show you how we go about doing that. So as this video loads here. We'll give it just a second to begin playing. You can see that I've got a big kind of dome that I put over top of my pepper plants there. If you don't have something like this, I really encourage you to do so, because it allows you to kind of really extend the beginning and the end of the season, where we can see here my pepper plants, they're still actually fairly green in October. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to find the main stem where it goes into the soil, and I'm going to come 6 inches off of it. And I'm then going to go down into the soil and just dig all the way around that plant, a full circle. Once I've done that, I'm going to go down deep as I can and begin to pull up the plant, keeping as much of that root zone intact as possible. That's the critical piece when it comes to digging up our pepper plants. And lastly, I'm just going to gently tap it so that we can get some of that soil coming off of the plant here. We want to get as much of that soil off as possible, and I'll show you another way to do that in just a second. So what our pepper plant should be looking like at the end of this is something along these lines. We've got, a root zone that's fairly straggly and kind of all over the place. And then we've got the foliage up above the plant. But we've gotten the plant out from being outside, and we can now start to kind of prepare it for the indoors. Again, the critical piece with this first step is that we want to keep as much of that root zone intact as possible. If we have roots, then we've got a really good chance of this baby surviving and beginning to thrive indoors. So now that we've got it out from being in the garden beds, let's move on to step number 2 here. And step 2, we want to prune those roots, and then we want to prune the foliage up above. Now, why are we going to go about doing this? Well, about the roots beneath the surface, they've either been growing in a container, or they've been growing in a raised bed, or maybe a grow bag. But they've probably been growing and kind of spreading out 7, 8, 9, 10, even longer and further out than that, 10 inches and beyond. And the container that we're going to be putting them in for the winter is likely to be significantly smaller than that. So we need to prune that root zone back so it's going to fit into their temporary house for the winter. But when we do that, we've taken all those roots off, which means that they're not going to be able to support all the foliage growth above. So we need to prune that back a little bit as well. How do we go about doing this? Well, let's dive into first taking a look at the roots here. So with the roots, what I want to be doing is grabbing my pruning shears, and I'm just going down to the roots, and I'm kind of just running through them. So I'm finding some roots, and then I'll grab and kind of chop off several inches of that. And what you're going to want to do on this front is kind of line it up with the container that you're putting them into. So if you know that you've got a container that's going to be 4 or 5 inches in diameter, then you would have the roots being able to fit into that. So when I take a look at my container now, I can see, all right, the root zone that I've now created is going to fit inside of that container. If when I put the roots and the plant over top of that container and it's still not fitting in, then just continue to prune back the roots until you have about 1 inch of space going around the outside of the plant there. And when you have then finished that, it is then kind of in a really good place to be moving into the container. But there is no kind of right or wrong way to it. You're just going to start from the outside and begin to close in on it so that it can fit into the container there. Now, for the foliage side of things, so on the top part of the plant, we also want to now prune that back. And what we want to be looking for on that front are the nodes on the plant. So when we look at our pepper plant, we're going to see the main stem with all the roots coming off of it. And then we're going to see different nodes that begin to exist. And these nodes are the distinct notches along the main stem. And this is where we're going to see leaves and then new branches coming out. And we want to make sure when we do our pruning here that we leave a few nodes on the plant, because that is where the new growth is going to come from. So let's go ahead and now look at what that will look like on the plant here. All righty, so I grab my pruning shears and I go and I chop off a little leaf there. This next angle is a little bit slower, so we'll be able to take a look here. Okay, so I'm inspecting the plant and I'm going up. I find the node there. I'm going to just pinch off these leaves so that we can see that node a little bit more clearly. Perfect. Beautiful V there where it splits 2 branches coming out of the node, and I'm going to chop just above the node there because that is where the new growth is likely to be coming from. Okay, so when you go ahead and you plant back and you begin to do that foliage pruning, again, you want to ensure that you're leaving some nodes on the plant. And I'm going to show you in just a couple moments what that looks like on a pepper plant when the new growth begins to come through it. And if you want, you can leave a couple of leaves. So the actual leaves that are on the plant right now, you can leave those on there. However, you can also totally remove all those from the plant. That's usually what I do. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to dive into step number 3 here, but I would love any questions that you have at the moment on these first few steps to go ahead and type those into the chat function, because after step 3, we're going to pause for a moment, answer a couple of those questions, and then continue along to step 4 and step 5 there. Okay, perfect. Now, step 3, it is a really, really important one, and that is that we want to inspect and rinse our plant. So our pepper babies have been living outside, and there could be some insects, potentially even aphids, whiteflies, spider mites that could be living on the plant or down in the soil and on the root system. And so what we want to do is we want to first inspect it, see if we can find anything, and then we want to give it a really good rinse there. So what we're going to be doing on this front is first, just with your eyes, take a look at it. See if you can spot any little specks that might be there, any little critters that are living on there. I think that I saw a individual just mentioned that they had some aphids on there. So not an issue. You can spray those off, but that is why we want to do this inspection process. And what you can see with my hose, I'm then going just up and down the plant, spraying all over it. Perfect. And I'm going to continue doing that spraying motion of just going up and down, back and forth on the plant, probably for about 90 seconds on every plant. So I want to really thoroughly rinse it and spray off anything that might be living on there. When you look at the root zone at the end of this, you shouldn't really see any dirt in there whatsoever. That's a sign that you've done a really good job of rinsing it off. And this is going to be really, really beneficial. So much so that I actually have a friend who I picked up about 4 or 5 pepper plants from that were covered in whiteflies. And I went through this exact process. I got them out of the containers, pruned up the roots, pruned off all the foliage where all those whiteflies were living, and then I rinsed the heck out of them. 8 days later now, I haven't seen a whitefly once. I repotted them and that really good rinse. So do this, and you're going to be able to overcome any of those little insect challenges that you might have had. All right, I want to pause for a moment here to begin diving into a couple of questions. Yeah, so a question from Kyra here. Does this work for bigger plants? Mine are probably 4 feet tall. How big of a pot should I use? So really great question there. And Kyra, you can prune that all the way back and leave 1, 2, 3 nodes on the bottom. So it's only 6 to 10 inches tall, and allow it to begin to grow from there. The important part that you're going to have to keep in mind with that is what its light source is going to be, which we're going to chat about in a couple moments. But if it's going to put on a ton of vertical growth, you'd probably want to make sure that it has a window, or you have a grow light that has a tall stand so that it can go above where it's going to be, when it puts on its next new 4 feet of growth there. Okay. Kim has a habanero plant that's at least 1 inch in diameter. Amazing. That looks like and sounds like a good sound there. A great question here from April. What if I still have peppers on my plant? So yeah, April, you could allow it to continue to grow and kind of stretch the season as long as you can. Put a dome over top of it to create a warmer environment and ripen up. Or you can begin to harvest those, eat them a little bit early. Maybe they don't quite ripen up, but you can still kind of enjoy them. I have a ton that were on my plants that were still green. I just popped those off, chop them up, and put them into a little bit of like a pickling brine. And so now I've got some pickled peppers that, they're not the absolute best, but they're definitely still yummy to have on some different dishes here and there. So by all means, you can still get some value out of them there. Perfect. Question from Danielle here. My peppers are already in pots from outside. There might be mites, etc. Perfect. So yeah, Danielle, I hope that that kind of explained things in there where you could leave them in those pots. And one thing that I do, like with that instance that I was just mentioning about the whiteflies, is that I set up a little like plant ICU where there's a heating mat in the bottom, there's a plastic dome that goes around it, and then there's a grow light that sits over top of it. If anybody wants to see my plant ICU, let me know. I might put together a video on it at some point here. But that way I can monitor it for as long as I need to see if there are any insects or critters in there before I then move it from the plant ICU into my growing area indoors. And as I mentioned with those whiteflies, I haven't seen any of them over the course of the first kind of 8 or 9 days here. So absolutely there. Okay, another question there. If there are small unripe peppers still hanging on the plant, will they continue to grow and ripen indoors? So when I transplant and begin the overwintering process, I pull off all of those fruit. And some of them, will ripen up a little bit off of the plant. Some of them will stay green. And that's, that's okay. For myself, a really big learning that I had this year was that I intentionally did a round of feeding with phosphorus, so bat guano, and then also shutting off the water about 5 days later on my peppers plants because I wanted to stress them out to then put on a whole bunch of flowers that would then turn into fruit, which happened about a month too late. I did that around like August 15th. And so next season, I'm going to do that around July 15th, which hopefully will mean that all those peppers will be nice and ripe right around now. And I'll be able to enjoy all of them before bringing them there. Amazing questions that are coming through from everyone there. I think there's one more here from Marie. So I still have green cayenne peppers on my plant that I hope would ripen indoors. So I was planning to bring inside like it is. It's in a container. Yeah, Marie, that's another way that you could go about this. So if it is in a container and you do create that ideal environment indoors, which we're about to get into, then it will likely continue to grow and those will likely begin to ripen up. Once again, just be kind of conscious of any insects that you might be tracking in. And if possible, maybe set up a bit of like a plant ICU in your garage before then bringing them indoors. So amazing questions that are coming through here. Go ahead and let me know how this has been so far, if it's been useful, if you're getting some tips, some information that's been helpful, and any additional questions that I have not gotten to so far, hang on to them. We're going to get to them after we finish step number 5 there. We're going to do a little bit of a Q&A session at the end there. So if I haven't gotten to it, don't worry, don't stress. We still got time to get to them towards the end here. But I want to go ahead and continue along into step number 4 here. And this is where we really start to get our baby all set up for the winter ahead here. Thank you so much, Dawn, for the kind words there. Amazing. So for step number 4, we want to pot them into seedling mix. And this is going to be kind of like their temporary residence over the course of the winter. And so what we're going to be doing on this front is that we get them into a seedling mix. And I love to have some nutrition in that seedling mix. And that's why with our seedling mix that we create at Mind and Soil, we include compost already mixed into it. We include worm castings already mixed into it, and then some peat moss and perlite for the drainage side. This ensures that the plant baby has everything that it needs through the entire winter to continue to put on its growth, whereby we don't even need to fertilize it over the course of the winter. It can just grow naturally in that environment. And so to do so, it's really, really straightforward. Because it's already nicely pre-mixed, we don't need to do any mixing ourselves. We just dump it into the container that's going to be the temporary residence. I like to fill it up about 2/3 of the way full here. So you can see in there, I'm about halfway to 2/3 of the way. And then I dig a little bit of a hole in the middle there. And that's where we're going to be putting the root zone into. Thanks so much for the words there, Peter. Perfect. And then we just pop it right into the middle. Make sure all those roots are nice and snug in there. And then we top it up with the rest of that seedling mix. So now this baby's got the worm cast and the compost, all of it already around there. The last thing that we do is we give it a really good drink of water. And for all of you that are joining here, I totally encourage you to take your turkey baster out of your kitchen, bring it out to your garage or wherever it is that you work on your plants, and use that for your watering. Because by using your turkey baster, it allows you to only put in a very small amount very slowly into the plant. And this allows for the water to sink in and fully saturate that root zone that is in a really shocked state. So when we've pruned all those roots, it's shocked. The best way to help it right now is to get it into a moist environment. And if we were to use like just a big like kind of watering can, usually what happens is that you get, a buildup of about an inch of water sitting on the top, and then it slowly works its way in. But what actually happens is that a lot of it just goes to the and goes down the side. So that turkey baster allows us to gently work it in all through the soil. And you want to keep on watering it until you see water coming out of the bottom there. And you're going to be able to feel it. It's going to have a little bit weight to it. So if you are interested in overwintering your peppers and going through each of those steps and to utilize that seedling mix, well, we do have our seedling mix available for sale, and you can buy it just by going to mindandsoil.com, and then right on the front page there, it's going to look just like this. There's a button that says seedling mix, buy now, and you just click on that and then add it into your cart. For any of the orders that are of 3 bags, the 3-bag option, we do offer free shipping on that all across Canada. We aren't able to ship into the US just yet. Fingers are crossed. We're working on it. But all 3-bag orders, you are going to get free shipping on that. If you want to grab only 1 bag, we do ship those across Canada with the free shipping. And then we also do our free local pickup point in Squamish and in Vancouver. So that would be another way that you could go down that path. And the last piece is that we do a 100% money back guarantee, because again, I do not want you worrying about a single thing. I just want you to be getting your hands dirty and to be making it as easy as possible for you to be getting your hands dirty and feeling comfortable and confident. So if that helps take any stress or any worry off of your mind, then we are all in favor of that. So any questions on that front, just go ahead, type those into the chat function. But let's dive into step number 5, which is a super easy one. And any additional questions, you can begin firing those into the chat function, because we're going to get to those in our Q&A session. So for step number 5, all that we need to do is to place this underneath a grow light. And it's really simple. All that I'm doing now that I've rinsed my baby and got into the seedling mix is I just grab it and begin to move it inside underneath that grow light there. So give it just a second for the video to load. Perfect. So I open up that door. A little bit challenging to do when you got a pepper in one hand and a camera in the other. And I pop it underneath the grow light there. And this is its home over the course of the winter. If you don't have a grow light, you could use a windowsill, but I am like by a landslide, a huge believer in getting a grow light set up. You can do it for under $50, and it's going to make the world of a difference in terms of how well these plant babies are going to grow. And so if you do each one of these steps, you dig it up and you maintain that root system, and then you prune up those roots and prune up the foliage and pop it into, well, then first give it that really good rinse up and down, and then pop it into the container and underneath a grow light. Then in about 10 days time is when the magic starts to happen. And what we're going to see is coming out of that node is that first sign of new growth. This is what we're going for. This is what we're hoping for. When you see this about 10 days in, you know that you have done it, you have made it, and this plant baby is going to survive and begin to thrive through the winter here. So you get to that point, you are all good. Now, just a couple of quick winter maintenance pieces that might be a couple of questions that we're about to have come through that I wanted to shed a little bit of light on. First one is from a lighting perspective. I like to have my babies underneath the grow lights for 12 hours per day. I have my grow light on a timer so that at 7 in the morning, it turns on, and then at 7 at night, it turns off. Gives it a really nice 12 hours per day. In terms of temperature, I like for it to be around 70 Fahrenheit, 21 Celsius. Now, because they're not germinating, it is okay if it is a little bit cooler than that, but they definitely like, excuse me, a nice and warm environment. Excuse me again. And then on the watering front, this is going to vary for each and every one of us, depending on which seedling mix you utilize, how warm it is, if you have a fan going, but generally it's going to be about every 3 to 7 days in there. All that you're going to want to do is put your finger in about down to where your knuckle is. And if at the bottom of that is still nice and moist, then don't water it. If it's just barely a little bit of moisture that you can feel, then you'd want to give it its next watering. And if the top is dry, then that's another sign that it would be time for its next watering. And then there's 3 kind of like optional pieces that you can be doing over the course of the winter here. So first one is fertilizing. This is something that I don't do, primarily because it's going to grow a significant amount just in that seedling mix, which has compost and worm castings. And so fertilizing it, it would put on more growth, but that's then going to be above my grow light. So I would then have to change my setup in there. So that's just what you're going to want to keep in mind in terms of whether or not you want to do any feeding fertilizing. For myself, I'm fine having it grow just completely on its own until I transplant it, and then to give it a really good big feeding at that point. In terms of pruning, so you can allow your plant just to grow, or you can begin to prune at different specific nodes to begin to shape the plant. So because our pepper plants can grow for multiple years, we can begin to shape them. And there's a whole kind of a world of building little chili pepper plant bonsais called bonchis. And that's where you're going to have this pepper plant for multiple years, and you can start to shape it and develop a really beautiful trunk on it. So if you'd like for me to do a video on pruning pepper plants for multiple seasons, just let me know in the chat function, because that's definitely something that I could shed some light on as well. And then lastly is that you're probably going to get some flowers on your plant over the course of the winter. And you can either take those off, you can pinch them off, or you can leave them on the plant there. So if you want to leave them on the plant, then those will ultimately turn into fruit if they are pollinated. Because we're indoors, we don't have too many pollinators. So you'd want to hand pollinate them just by kind of like tickling them or using a Q-tip. And then you're going to see fruit growing on that plant. Or you can once again pinch off each one of those flowers, and that will redirect all the energy back into new green foliage growth. What's most important to me on that front is that there is not one right way, there's not one wrong way to go about overwintering your peppers. You could fertilize, you could not fertilize, you could prune, you could not prune, you could leave flowers on, you could take flowers off. For myself, there are so many different ways to be going about gardening, and so I really, really, really hope that some of these methods, some of these techniques resonate and are going to help you out, and that you give them a try, and that each and every one of you are feeling even more comfortable, even more confident when it comes to overwintering your pepper plants here. So folks, that is everything that I wanted to cover off on for this evening. Thank you all so much. And let's open it up now to a little bit of question and answer time. Perfect. I see a question from Andrea here. What temperature minimum for it to thrive? And so again, I like for it to be in that 70 Fahrenheit, 21 Celsius range. And Andrea's second part of that question was, can this be done in a greenhouse? So yes, it could be done in a greenhouse. Just make sure that that greenhouse is heated, because if it's not heated, you're probably going to get some really nice daytime temperatures, but keep an eye on what temperature it is around kind of 5 in the morning when it's been sitting in the cold dark of night. If it is below like 15 Celsius, and if it's like especially close to freezing level, we're going to have a tough time. But if you're heating that greenhouse, then it's all good. Okay. I think Barbara had a similar question there on the temperature front. So again, yeah, around 70. Perfect. So Faith, yeah, plan to keep peppers in a cool room, 10 Celsius with sun. Is that good enough? We're getting into the zone there of where they're probably not going to like really put on tons of growth. But I don't think that they would die off at 10 Celsius. Again, for them to really be thriving, they'd want to be more in like that to 21 Celsius. All right, lots of folks are wanting the pruning video. Amazing. Perfect. Okay, amazing question from Debbie here. I would like to learn about putting the plant into dormancy, so a dark place rather than grow lights. Yes, would like info on planting as well. So One other option that you could go into here is that rather than putting your plant under a grow light, you put it into a cool and dark place. And that's going to then basically have the plant going dormant, where it's not going to grow at all, but it's also not going to die. And a number of individuals go down this path and do it. I tried it last year with 3 plants. All 3 of them died on me. So I don't have too much insight on how to go about doing it successfully, other to say that I do know that individuals have gone about doing it. I'm just not the one with the answers on that front. Okay. Another question there from April. I have a green, put it back out in the greenhouse after the first frost. So April, our pepper plants, they really love a warm environment. So they are going to be one of the last plants that we move into the garden. You're going to want to move it back into the garden around the same time that you'd be putting your tomatoes, your zucchinis, your squashes, basil into the garden. So I would probably wait a little bit later than that first frost or that last frost date, a little bit later on in the season on that front. And the other piece on that front was, if you saw that dome that I used at the very beginning, creating a little like mini greenhouse environment for it is a really, really great way to go about doing it. Perfect. Question from Iona there. Aside from peppers, what other plants can this method be used for? So yeah, I'm not entirely sure on that one. There's some plants like our kale, our Swiss chard, that we're going to be able to leave outside in the garden, and they're going to survive the winter. And then there's other perennials like your lavender, your rhubarb, your strawberries that you would want to leave outdoors. I personally, I don't bring any other ones inside over the course of the winter at this time. But there might be some other ones that could be an option for. Great question from Kevin here. So if my greenhouse is heated, do I need to have extra grow lights? So if your greenhouse is heated, perfect. And if that's where you've been growing over the course of the summertime, then it's likely getting enough light as is. Now, if it's in a part of your garden that as we get into the shorter days of the year gets less sunlight or no sunlight, like there are beds in my backyard that right now get 0 hours of direct sunlight per day. In an instance like that, I would then want to have a little bit of supplemental light in there in the form of grow lights, just to be getting some light directly on those plants there. Amazing question there, Kevin. These questions are so good. Another one here from Ken. So Ken's asking, what size of pot do you use there? So that one that I was potting it up to, it's about a gallon worth. And you can go with something even smaller than that. I've got some that are probably more in like a liter to a 2 liter size. So by all means, you could go with something smaller. Just keep in mind here that if you go smaller, we're going to make that root zone even smaller as well. So continue just to match it with the size of container that you're going into there. Amazing question. They've got a question there from Mr. or Mrs. Hargrove. Any storage suggestions for the crazy amount of habaneros my plant produced? First and foremost, huge congratulations to you on that front. I just did a habanero hot sauce that I'm really, really, really enjoying. You could dry them as well and then have them as dried peppers, or you could go about just pickling them. Those would be kind of 3 options to go about it. All right, a couple more folks are wanting, okay, Ken also answered there, chop and freeze, pickle, and then string them together and air dry them. So I think Ken had a number of the same ones as me. I haven't tried freezing any of mine, but I might have to give that a whirl. Awesome. So super cool. It sounds like you could also do eggplant and do okra. Wonderful. I think that answers Maureen's question. Maureen, so great to see you on here. Your seedling mix is on your way. It just got dropped off yesterday, so you are all good there. Perfect. From T-Mac here, and I think this might be the last question. So as we get a question here, I would love just to hear like what's been most useful for everybody. Before we sign off, let me know what has been most useful, most helpful for you in our happy hour here this evening. But the question from T-Mac here is, how far should the grow lights be from the top of the plant? And would you recommend a heat mat? And yes, please, trimming video. Thanks for the awesome video. Okay, awesome. So a couple of questions there to touch on. So how far should the grow light be from the top of the plant? Okay, so the way that we want to go about this is not necessarily just based off of a height, but rather based off of the number of lumens. How much light is the plant receiving? Because we could have a really, really long light, but it could be 30 feet up above it, and the plant's not going to be getting it. Or we could have a really, really weak plant and have it only 12 inches above, and the plant's still not getting enough. And so what I do is I'm going to show you here on my phone. Where are you? Is I have this little app called Light Meter. And what it does is it shows you the amount of lumens in the room. So right now it's saying 32. And you can download this app and put it at the top of your plant. So if this is the top of your plant, you'd put your phone right on top of it. And you want for that number to be around 5,000 to 15,000. That's a really great zone, great range for to be receiving light. Now, what I found is that usually using a windowsill, it's not close to that high. And that's why I always go with a grow light. So using the app Light Meter to check the number of lumens, put it on the top of the plant. And then again, if you get a reading of about 5,000, perfect. Just move your phone higher up until you get it to around that zone of 5,000. And then you'll know, okay, that's about the amount that I want to have in terms of space between where the grow light is and where the top of my plant is. Amazing question there. And then I think the second one was, yeah, would you recommend a mat? So in terms of a heating mat, we would be more likely to be using that when we're starting our seeds, because the seeds, for them to germinate, they need it to be at least 20 Celsius. At this point, though, the roots are already growing there. They've been outside where it's been definitely colder than 20 Celsius, so it's not as critical. If you really want to be kind of giving your plants a little bit of extra love, then by all means go with using that heat mat if you have it on hand. But if you don't have it on hand, I wouldn't put it into like the category of a must-have for overwintering your pepper plants there. Okay, I think that answers everything here. Perfect. Oh, one more here from Carolyn. Does the plant need a period of rest, or is it okay to promote fruit production year round? So Carolyn, if you prune it all the way back, whereby you've taken off essentially all of the foliage, then it's going to go through its natural cycle of first putting on some foliage growth, the nodes, the new internodes, more foliage, and then it's going to set flowers. So it's going to take care of that on its own. There's nothing in particular that you need to do to remove certain things for the plant to begin growing in a particular way. Once you've done that first big prune back, just allow it to grow. And then if you'd like for those flowers to turn into fruit, leave them on the plant, hand pollinate them, and they will become fruit. Okay, oh, amazing. Thank you all so much for the kind words here. Thank you, Gail. Thank you, Barbara. Shelly, thank you so much. Perfect. Yeah, Adrian, I literally take off all of the leaves on my plant, and I got those couple in my backyard for you to be picking up next week. Thank you so much, Kim. Thank you, Faith. Amazing. Thank you, Yaling. Amazing. Okay, question from an individual, not related to peppers, but do you grow chayote squash? Wondering how to store sprouted squash over the winter. I haven't grown that specific variety, so I wouldn't be able to offer too much useful information on that front. Accounting department, thank you so much. Glad that that app was useful. Cindy, wonderful, amazing. So happy to hear that you've enjoyed this. Lots of useful information on there. Phyllis had a question there. Where do I get the lights for grow lights? So we're probably going to have these on our website in the coming months here. But for the time being, you could use Sunblaster, or you could utilize another brand called Monios, M-O-N-I-O-S. Those are the two that I utilize in my kind of grow light area. We don't have any affiliation with either one of those brands. I just really love their grow lights, and they're both very cost effective. You can get the Monios ones for less than $50. Perfect. Well, let's see. Okay, I think we got a couple more questions here that are coming through. So a question from Faith came through, which light meter app? There are so many. So the one that I use, it's literally called Light Meter, but I am on a Google Pixel. So that is in the Google Play Store. That would be the only piece. Yeah, so then great question from Dorothy. Do you get a stronger plant next year if you do this, or just another year? So this plant is going to be stronger. The root system on it is going to be larger and more developed. It's going to have more foliage, more shoots for new fruits to be coming out of. So I think that you're going to be really, really excited with how well and how much fruit is coming off of the plant next year there. Perfect. Carolyn, I do believe that is the right name there, Lux Light Meter Pro. Hey, Michael, so great to hear that you got the order there, got it over to the other Michael, and I believe that the two of you are going to be coming through Squamish at some point for a little garden tour. Can't wait to meet you in person there at some point here. Wonderful. Alrighty, folks. Well, I think that gets us to the very end of the questions here. Thank you all so much for all engagement along the way. Keep your eyes peeled for the very next one that's going to come up. Once again, I do encourage you to hit the subscribe button so that you're notified of the next videos that we launch and that you're right there with us for the whole journey. We've got videos coming out every single Thursday. And then any questions that you have over the course of the winter, next spring, we're going to do a whole bunch of stuff on starting seeds, planting your garden, all that good stuff. And any questions you have at any point on any of those, just drop them onto the videos and we'll be able to get an answer over to each and every one of you. Alrighty, folks, that's everything for today. Thank you all so much. Have a great evening. I'll catch you all on the next one here. Take care, everyone.